Welcome to the Daughter Podcast, where dads come to talk, grow, and thrive. I'm your host, Oscar, and this is a space for men who are committed to becoming stronger, more mindful, and more present, especially in the lives of their daughters. Fatherhood is a journey of growth. Each conversation on this podcast is a chance to learn, reflect, and level up as a dad and as a man. Whether you're a brand new father or deep into the teenage years, we're here to support each other through every stage. Being daughter means embracing the lessons our daughters are continuously teaching us and using them to become better. We challenge current misconceptions of masculinity and lead with strength, compassion, and intention, building stronger relationships and lasting memories along the way. This show is for everybody who's ready to show up, not as a perfect parent, but as a growing one. Hey everybody, welcome back. Oscar here, your local growing girl dad. Today with a guest co-host that I'm really excited to bring to you, Ryan Walton. Ryan, thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, this is my pleasure, man. So good to hang out with you. Love what you're putting out in the world. The conversations you're having, they're so important. So, man, it's my pleasure.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you, and I'd like to bring you in with a little intro so our folks know who you are, if they don't already, because you're kind of all over the place. You're popping up everywhere in my social media, so that's super cool. Let me bring you over with a little intro and then give our guests a good foundation for us to get into conversation. Mm-hmm. So Mr. Ryan Walton is the founder of Daring to Dad, which we'll get into today. Super cool program that he's got. He is a certified integral coach, former pastor, and for the last 15 years has been helping organizations and individuals thrive through holistic spiritual integration, social change, and business growth. Man, that's a mouthful.
It sounds really good when you say it.
Well, good. I'll take that as a compliment.
We're like, oh yeah, I guess I have been doing that, right?
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that before we get into too much. I mean, that's a lot of stuff, man, and you're busy.
Yeah, I am busy and raising, 2 kids in the midst of all those things. And it's interesting, dude. I mean, I am 43. Okay. And as I'm listening to you say that and reflecting on some of those places that I've been, it's an exciting time for me. And I don't know how many of your listeners are in maybe this season of life. And it's an exciting time because I feel like I've lived enough life to have some experience, and I've seen some stuff, and I've been through some things, and I have things to say, but I also have a lot to learn still. Right. And it's this interesting spot. But yeah, my background was I got brought up in the evangelical church, and I was like an 80s, 90s evangelical Christian kid and come from a really loving, supportive family. And right out of college, I went to like Bible college and did this whole thing. Right out of college, took a job as a pastor, moved to Northern California where I'm at right now, and did that for almost a decade and was really passionate about, what I was doing at the time. In my mid to late 20s, I began having experiences that brought into question a lot of what I believed about the world, the way I was showing up. I was raised in this. It was really all I'd ever known. Mm-hmm. And I began to meet people that really challenged what I thought about the world and who other people were and who I was, what my purpose was. And one thing led to another. I ended up stepping away from a lot of what I was doing within church and church ministry. And it threw me onto a journey where I really had to rediscover who I was. And it really upended my entire world. I mean, this was what I was doing professionally and vocationally. It was my social structure. Everything that I believed about who I was and what was mine to do in the world got flipped on its head. In the midst of all that, I also became a dad. And my son was born. I come from a really loving family. I have a good relationship with my dad. And being a dad was always something that I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to be a dad and had a lot of big ideas about what a dad was like and what I thought I would be as a dad.
Right.
And when my son came into the world, it hit me just like a train. And a lot of things that I had not dealt with in my life surfaced up. I realized, oh man, I'm a lot more angry than I thought I was. I really like my own way of doing things a lot. I am not as patient as I thought I was. And in the midst of all this change in my life, I was really struggling early on with fatherhood. And this was the time when social media and things like that were just beginning to take off. And that's a little bit of my background in communication and stuff. And so I was kind of blogging and putting stuff out there on social media, just talking about my journey as a dad. And when I look back on it, what it really was me sending out this SOS into the world. Yeah. Somebody help. Is anybody out there?
Right.
And it was other men out there that saw my messages and responded and helped pick me back up and direct me back to myself and who I was, my capability to navigate fatherhood. And over time, you know, I continued to write, continued to kind of put content out there into the world. And the transition happened where I began to look for those SOS signals from other guys, look for other guys that were out there looking for help, looking for support. That brought me back to the work of helping people, not in the way that I was doing it before through like church and pastoral ministry, but in a new way. And so that's where I'm at now. I work specifically with men, with fathers. I find that it's incredibly important and necessary work in the world. I'm also currently in the process of getting my grad degree and going into full-time clinical counseling. My coaching practice is a big part of what I do, Daring to Dad, the content, putting things out there in the world for men and fathers. That's what brought me here.
Well, man, it sounds like you have a lot of practice in it.
Yeah.
And if I'm trying to do math, which we've all known on the podcast, like I'm not the math guy, so bear with me here, right?
Yeah.
So 12 years ago, we're looking at, was that 2012?
2012. Yep. Yeah. 2012
so
was when my son was born. Yeah.
Your son comes in, right?
Yeah.
In 2012, I think iPhones came out in like 2004, but surely you got out of MySpace. And then around 2012, you started getting a lot of this social media stuff.
Yeah.
So you're already doing the writing, the blogging, if you will, well before this really kicked up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had the practice there. And now, I mean, I'm learning from you, right? Like the things you put out is probably just that experience, that constant introspection that a lot of us are looking for.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you know, man, I think part of it is that I am someone who enjoys and finds healing and insight through community, right? And in collaborative, like learning and putting things out there. And that's my way of expression, right? That's the art of communication, of content creation. It's part of my own desire to learn and grow and heal, even as a coach, as a therapist. And you talk to a lot of people who are coaches and therapists. A big motivation for being in that work is our own healing and our own growth. There's some selfish motivation as part of that. And that's my way I have found is like, you know, through writing, through photography, through the expressive creation of making a video or something like that, or gosh, hosting a podcast or whatever it is, that there's something in that for me that is part of the healing process and part of the growth process.
Yeah. Now, when did the Daring to Dad podcast begin?
So the podcast is fairly recent. And I sat on the podcast thing for a long time. I was like, oh man, no, I don't have time for that. It's too much work.
Yeah.
And I recently have really discovered that I don't want to be a full-time content creator. I mean, that's one of the downsides of how this is working right now and how this is impacting our lives, right? I mean, these social media platforms, and I will say too that I'm in the social media marketing world also professionally, and I've done other things besides coaching and jobs and working for large organizations, corporations, and doing social media work. So this has been my sphere for a long time, my area of expertise. It's so easy to get sucked into the content world and to where you're spending so much time on these platforms who really are after every second of our lives. That's how they grow.
Yeah.
And the stress of like, oh my gosh, what kind of video I'm going to make today? What kind of picture am I going to make today? And I'm just obsessing over this kind of stuff. So I finally decided to jump into the podcast because I felt like the podcast was a platform to go deep into issues and create content and have conversations that I really care about. And those can stretch out a bit more. It kind of took some of the burden off this other type of content that I was making. And it's been great. So the Daring to Dad podcast is coming up maybe on a year that I've been doing it. So not very long at all.
Well, I think we're probably just hitting a year for us as well. So you're right. The podcast, it's like you're putting information out and they'll like it or they don't. Whereas the content, you're worrying about the engagement and the attention and all those different things, right? Yeah, I can see that. Now, going back to 2012, your son comes in and flips your world upside down.
Yeah.
Right. Puts you on this whole new path of finding probably not just Ryan, but Ryan the dad. That's what you're looking for. Walk us through real quick, and we'll get to your daughter, because I know everybody, we haven't mentioned it yet, but this is a daughter podcast, and he does have a daughter.
I do, yes.
And we're going to get there, but I want to paint that picture, right? Because you have two sides of the coin here that not all of us have. I have 3 daughters. I don't have that perspective of a father of a son, right?
Yeah.
So 2012, you wanted to be a dad, and I've discussed this in the podcast before. I don't know that I internalized that. You internalized wanting to be a dad. You had an idea of what a dad was going to be, and you wanted to do that.
Yeah.
How was it once you found out that you have a child coming to the world? And then once they're here, how did that contrast? Like once they were here, how did your brain kind of adjust to that?
Well, I think for me, there's always a sense that as a father, when your child comes into the world, it feels like it happens very quickly.
Right.
We have not been attached to this person for like 9-10 months.
Yeah.
Where our partner has, right? There's something incredibly connected to a woman and having this child, and they're physically connected.
Right.
You know, we've been preparing. We went to the classes, we read the books, we listened to the podcasts or whatever, but there's a different kind of connection, and boom, it happens quick. And then all of a sudden there's this child, and you're having to play catch up real quick. You're like, okay, I'm having to find my place in this.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, my partner is different. Like there's something now more important than me to them.
Right.
That is consuming their time.
Yeah.
Emotionally, physically. And you feel, I remember feeling this on the outside, like, what's my part in this? I feel like I'm on the outside of this thing. I feel like the B parent. What's my role? And there's this, you witness the powerful connection between mom and baby and the bond. It can be a really confusing time. It was a confusing time for me. It can be a confusing time for dads trying to figure out where I'm at. So what do? We try to, and I did this, we try to really lean into the things that we can control,
right?
Things that we can impact. So we get really heavy involved in our work, right? And all the things that we can do to kind of create structure to the environment, right? And all the meanwhile, trying to figure out, okay, navigate my own, and also what a lot of times we do, because we get into care mode, we can often neglect ourselves. I know that was a part for me, kind of neglecting my own feelings about having this and who am I processing with. And if I don't have maybe some of those relationships in my life, places I can go and talk to, I'm burying even those feelings. Early fatherhood for me was a combination of a lot of those things and feeling like, okay, where do I fit into all this? And what's my role? And
it's overwhelming.
It is.
Right?
It's totally overwhelming. And there's something physically that's happening to us when we become dads. It's different, obviously, for moms, but it's important nonetheless. And I think that we have work to do both as men, but also as a society about how we do care for new dads. In kind of the postpartum world. And, men get postpartum depression. That's a real thing, and often it goes untreated. It can be really hard on the relationship because the relationship dynamic changes so much, and so it could be a really. I know it was for me a very difficult and trying time. Another thing I experienced too is, when you bring a child into the world, it feels like the stakes on everything are higher now.
Oh yeah,
it's like your job changes because the stakes of having a job are higher.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Everything, money, finances, budget, all these different types of things. It just feels like have a heightened sense of importance and can add also to, I think, to the stress of having a newborn.
I think you're absolutely correct. I'll use scientific words here. The synapses that happen, at least for me, when I held my first child, it almost felt like I felt them either connecting or disconnecting, right? Something was going on in the brain. It was like, everything's changed. You've changed. This little thing has changed everything that I think or how I process, because it just feels different right away. Absolutely.
Yeah. All of a sudden it's like, boom, you're in the hospital. The baby comes, you're like, oh, what? We take it home now? And this
Yeah,
is just ours. Is anyone coming with us? Oh, it's just
that's
us. Oh
right.
my gosh. And so it just arrives and there's this connection moment and yeah, it's an intense thing, man.
Yeah, you look at the nurse, it's like, there's a manual for this, right? There's got to be
Yeah.
an emergency procedures
Yes.
for this,
Right.
what's going
Yeah.
on.
Hmm.
And we get home, and I know my wife and I kind of looked at each other. Baby was sleeping in the car seat. We're just like, now what? For me, it was overwhelming for sure. I guess I never really thought about it the way you just talked about, where it's like, I became a parent that day,
Hmm.
right? And it's weird because prior to when my wife told me, I was like, all right, we got to prepare financially. We got to make sure we have this. We have to make, all
Hmm.
these different things.
Yep.
Her mind is going different, right? Where she's nesting, she's doing these
Hmm.
things that
Hmm.
take care of the baby in a different manner.
Yeah.
But for me, everything was more material. How do I, and I think I mentioned it in my last episode, how do I start to solve this equation? Because you just threw a new piece of the equation in, and now I don't know how to fit that in. And
Yeah.
then to your point, and this is something, again, I'd never really thought about, is where am I in that equation as well? Because
Hmm.
everything kind of changed to that.
Yeah.
And you do get into the mode of, well, I'm not really bonding, right, with the
Hmm.
baby. I'm going to go do something else. I'm just going to bury my head in it and work
Yeah.
as hard as I can and make more money and do these things. You mentioned something too that was very apparent in my career as I've been going through. So, my first daughter, they gave us 10 days. The dad, as the baby was born, we got 10 days. And you can take more if you have to leave or what have you. But it was given that the day the baby's born, from that day, you have 10 days to bond with your baby, and then you back to work.
Hmm.
And then my second daughter still had 10 days.
Hmm.
And my third, I got 21 days. So
Hmm.
it started to
Yeah.
adjust,
Hmm.
somewhat.
Right.
Now it's a full 12 weeks of paid leave for men, right? Because I believe, this is just my speculation, I haven't researched it, but I believe that we're finding that there is that connection that we need to make.
Yeah.
And it's not just with the child, reconnecting with our spouse who
Yep.
is now different,
Yep.
reconnecting with the process of this household that's been created, which is now different.
Hmm.
And so I've seen that transition. I didn't get 12 weeks off, but now it's available because I think we're seeing that we need that, right?
Yeah.
And we're seeing some gaps.
And when society's changing, right?
Right.
It wasn't until the 60s that men were even allowed into the
Yeah,
delivery
right.
room. And now there's an expectation that men are full like partners in this process,
Right.
right? So understanding like, the birthing plan and being there, being in the delivery room, being partners in post care and being there afterward. And we know science is telling us this is important for the whole family, for mom, for baby. I mean, early on, skin to skin contact with babies and dad, all those kinds of things. And men finding their way in that space is really important. And having the time to do that, the resources to be able to do that and to learn maybe some new skills,
Yeah.
not just like, oh my gosh, how do I swaddle this baby?
Right.
But how do I communicate with my partner during
Yeah.
this time? How do we work through this new rhythm and new schedule of sleep and making the food and all this kind of, what are the skills we need to navigate that? Never easy, but how do we do that with a bit more ease and
Yeah.
more skill? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
This just came in my head, so I got to ask you this question. Do you think that 50s and 60s you're talking about, like, dads weren't even in the
Mhm.
room, like they're outside? I think the
Yep.
the stereotypical view of the dad is outside with a celebratory cigar and maybe a drink while
Yeah.
their wife is doing the work.
Sure.
Do you think that with that change, or maybe the omission of the father inside the room,
Hmm.
maybe there wasn't that built admiration and respect for their wives? Because, like, I tell you what, brother, when I was in there, I was like, how are you doing this? And
Yeah.
why? Like,
Yeah.
it just, all these things went to my brain, and I just had nothing but admiration for my wife. I was like, this is insane.
Most mind-blowing experience.
Mind
If
blowing.
you've been in the room, I mean, you're like, what I saw the mother of my kids go through,
Yeah.
and I mean, yeah, the miracle of life to witness that. Again, this is probably some psychology and some
Yeah.
history that they're surely all studied up on, but I can't imagine that being able to be there and witness that and witness the miracle of life has
Yeah.
a profound impact on us as men in a positive way.
as a society, right? Because
Yeah.
you start bringing them in. You start bringing them into the room, and it's like, this is what we're doing while you're out there with your cigar. Like,
right.
this is what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
I think it's an incredibly important moment. And should you be fortunate enough to be able to experience that, I recommend it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's an insane thing. Just as we're talking about this, I can close my eyes and see that moment. I'm just like beyond, I mean, in awe, truly in awe.
Yeah. And I talk to my kids about it all the time, like sappy dad moments from like, I'll just be like, I remember the moment you came into the world. I remember the first time I held you against my chest. I remember all the little details of that moment. And it's a powerful thing, man.
It is a powerful thing. It reminds them where they came from, right? And how they're here.
Yeah.
And hopefully gives them admiration for their mother as well.
Yeah.
So 2012, you had your son. Obviously, a lot of change going on for you, aside from just having a kid. And your daughter is 7.
Yep.
Right? So don't make me do math again. When
2017. 2017. Yeah.
Okay, so 2017 she comes in. Give me that view. So now you have some experience. You found a tribe.
Yeah.
Right? You found that SOS got answered at some point, and it allowed you to start answering some SOSs out there. But now you find out you're having a daughter. How is that feeling now with the experience that you have now, with having a son, and now knowing that the playbook's been changed?
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a brother. I grew up in a house of boys, all boys, but I always somewhere deep down knew that I would have a daughter someday. Like, it was just kind of this deep feeling that I had that would be a part of my story. And that was confirmed the day we found out that we were going to have a little girl. And it was especially important to us because we did go through a lost pregnancy between the two. And that had its own challenges. And for my daughter to come and be healthy, a healthy baby girl the way she was really redemptive, in our lives at the time. And yeah, she was incredible. I was so happy to get to have an experience, both a son and a daughter. And I mean, I know some guys who worry about that or have some hesitations, maybe because they aren't really sure, what to do. I don't know if I felt that as much, if I'm really honest. I mean, I felt really comfortable navigating her world. I definitely think no matter what, you bring in more kids into the world and navigating relationships between those kids and different personalities and integrating, a new kid into the family always have their challenges. But yeah, I mean, they're both incredibly different. I'm so proud of the person she is currently and is becoming. I love being a boy dad. I love being a girl dad. I love it all. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
How do you see yourself within, like, if you were to step from outside looking in, do you see a different dad when you're with them separately and together?
I think yes and no. I hear some people say that we parent sons and daughters differently, and there's a lot of theories out there about a dad's relationship with his son versus a dad's relationship with his daughter. There are some things that are a through line with both of my kids.
Okay.
Gender, doesn't really matter. For me, the ability to navigate my own world, me to be a safe place for them is important no matter what.
Of course.
Right? I'm modeling the kind of man that my son can look up to and the kind of man that my daughter will tolerate in the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so there's a modeling happening no matter what. Right. Now, of course, there are little things I think that come up. I definitely find, I hear this about mothers and daughters, and it's probably true about fathers and sons, that we're probably a little bit harder on our boys. We know what it means to navigate the world as a man.
Yeah.
We have an intimate connection with that. And I think because of that, we tend to interact with our sons a little bit differently. But I think it's important, no matter what, that we teach our sons to be strong and brave and resilient.
Right.
But also to be open, right? And to be able to be connected to their heart and to their emotions.
Yeah.
We can teach our daughters to be connected to their hearts and emotions and have a relational depth, but also to be strong and brave and resilient, right? There are lessons that are, I think, both are important. The biggest thing for me, no matter what, my big parenting rules, one, I want to be without a doubt for my kids to know that I'm crazy about them. Number one. And number two, to create a type of environment where they can be the most full expressions of themselves.
Right.
Right. And so I think it's both important to understand how sons and daughters can be different.
Yeah.
Biologically, obviously they're, different, but also to create an environment for them where they feel safe to be really who they are.
Yeah.
And I have a mentor who talks about that raising kids is like launching rockets, and that, we're creating the kind of environment where they can really launch into this world in the most true expression of themselves. So, yeah.
I think it's important today more than ever to create that space where they can be their full authentic self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we have social media, we have everything else out there that's telling the kids how to be and what to do and how to act. That our presence, and we talked a little bit about this off camera, my presence, particularly as the masculine figure in the house, for example, I want it to be in a certain way so that they are able to open up regardless of what's going on around them in the world.
Yeah.
I have a 13-year-old, and the conversations that happen are awesome.
Yeah.
I wish it wouldn't happen at bedtime when we're trying to get them down.
Like,
right?
I want to talk now. Yeah.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. Like all day. We had all day, and now you want to talk. But it's important to even take those times, because that may be the only time I get. And maybe that's what makes her feel comfortable. And so allowing that to happen, I think if I reflect on my childhood, I don't know that that was the case. And you mentioned something very interesting at the beginning of our conversation, which was that, and you didn't say these words, but your son was ultimately a mirror of you. He held up a mirror to you, and you realize, oh man, I actually like my way a lot more than I thought. And I like all those things. And so if we notice that early enough, and that's my goal for this dad, the podcast, and the things that I get to learn through here, is to be able to find what I saw in the mirror, bring it back to an SOS and say, have you done this before? Like, how do I get out of that?
Yeah.
And I think that's also important. So allowing them to be themselves, crucially important in current times, but then also allowing yourself to know that there is also a self that you have, right? At least I feel this way. They show you. It's almost like they hold a mirror up for a second, and you're like, oh, I didn't like that version of myself.
Yeah, well, I think that loving your kids is a practice in loving yourself. And especially if you have a kid who's a lot like you, you begin to immediately start to say, oh, I'm familiar with that. I'm familiar. And those become the biggest things that can really activate you as a parent, right? And I think that's a really important thing for parents to be aware of. Many times when you're interacting with your child, you are not necessarily interacting with their behavior. You're interacting with your discomfort with your own behavior.
Interesting.
You see your kid, let's say, that you have a certain quality about yourself that has been challenging for you, right? And your child exhibits this as well.
Right.
That's going to activate you and really rile you up a lot quicker than other types of things, because it's something that you are not liking in yourself. And actually, that's what you're interacting with in that moment.
Interesting.
And so there's often this thing between us and our kid that we're working through. Yeah. And that's where I think a healthy you and an aware and conscious you is healthy for the entire family. You just kind of alluded to this. You are the largest nervous system in the house as a dad, and your energy radiates, right? And your ability to navigate, and now this is not suppress, it's not put aside, it's not ignore. Your ability to know yourself, your ability to regulate your own nervous system has profound impact. And this is not like a call to be perfect. You're going to have, I bark at my kids, that stuff happens, right? But overall, do our kids feel that like dad is under control? And I think that's what one of the things that the world is asking of men right now is not perfection, but do you have the tools and skills to be able to navigate your ups and downs in a way that creates safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
And protection for the people that are in your care. So, yeah, talking about that mirror, yes. And when that mirror is held up to you and you see parts of yourself, what do you do then? How
Right.
do you deal with that? Where do you go to when you're like, okay, you know what? So when that mirror is held up to you, it doesn't turn into anger and
Mm-hmm.
rage and frustration that then gets translated back onto our kids.
Right. And I'm gonna say maybe it does activate that anger or frustration, but knowing that that's there
Mhm.
allows you to control that. Whereas
Yeah.
before, you might just see that mirror and pop off.
Yeah.
But now it's like you see it, you feel it, and you're like, that's
Mhm.
not about her.
Yeah. Well,
It's
and,
about
and
me.
and there's another side of this too. That is, it's easy for us to see things in our kids that are like us
Right.
that are problematic, but they also have the things about you that are beautiful,
Mm.
and they have the things about you that are really, really special,
Yeah.
right? My daughter, I mean, just sings and dances and has this theatrical joy to her. I love it. And that's me. I love singing. I have a background in music.
Yeah.
I play instruments and stuff, and I love that. And that's something in her
Yeah.
that's also reflective of me is a beautiful thing. So when I say that loving your kids is a practice in loving yourself, it's both being able to deal with some of the reflective things that
Yeah.
are not maybe so great, but also being able to see the things that are beautiful as a reflection as well.
Yeah.
But they're both important.
Joey and I talked about this in the second episode where we tend to only see the negative stuff that we have to fix.
Yeah.
Right. And in almost anything, but absolutely, at least for Oscar speaking, in my kids, like I will see the
Yeah.
negative things, or I'll be doing something and I'll hear one of my girls say something. I'm like, oh crap, that's me. Like for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always like this negative thing, but don't ever, I won't say ever, I don't catch myself catching the positive things
Hmm.
in the mirror.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. They have some amazing qualities that I love, right?
Hmm.
Like their
Yeah.
passion and their playfulness and their goofiness, like all these different things. And it may be a fallacy, but I don't associate those with me. So those positive things I don't associate with me.
Hmm.
I do associate them with my wife because I see some of those
Hmm.
views as
Yeah.
I see my children, but I don't associate the positive things with me. I just say, you're awesome, right? Because I
Yeah.
see it. But
Hmm.
as far as like when you're holding up the mirror, I don't associate that positive in the mirror.
Yeah.
I associate it as somehow you've got this thing that makes you awesome, right?
Yeah.
And I fail to give my wife and I credit for those things because
Yeah.
we are working to raise them in a household that allows those things to be, right? And so I just don't see those, if I'm looking at the mirror for a second, I don't see the positive. I'm always looking at like, what am I supposed to correct? What am I supposed to
Right.
correct? And to your point earlier, that ultimately becomes that nagging, that upset or frustration or like
Mhm.
all these things
Yeah.
that start to drive our kids away because you're essentially talking to the mirror, but they're behind that mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And if you're in a spot where you begin to notice like your kid like checking out, and it's so easy to slip into, right? The lectures and the corrective stuff, and
Yeah.
and some of that needs to happen, right? There's some corrective conversations that have to take place, and
Yeah.
and those are important. But I think if reinforcing positive behavior and even small little things like saying thank you, I really appreciate you that you did that. Like I didn't ask you to do that, and you did it. I just want you to know that was killer. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think those moments, it's like if we're gonna make withdrawals, we also have to make deposits.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you got to capitalize on those moments because it's very quick to go away. Whether it's frustration or busyness, those moments tend to go away. That's where I catch myself at the end of the night, kids are asleep, and I start to write a little bit, and I'm like, oh man, I didn't say thank you for this, or I didn't apologize for this thing, because I'm thinking through the day, and so quickly those moments go away.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been trying to work on more, to capitalize on that moment, whether it's positive or negative, in my view, to say the thank yous, say the praise, and then also maybe apologize for raising my voice or for my specific attitude towards something, what have you, to show them that the important thing is not perfection, as you mentioned. It's being able to be aware of yourself and how you come across.
Man, that's a powerful thing, dude, because what you're doing there is modeling being able to apologize, say when you're wrong, or come back and say, hey, you know what? I realized I didn't thank you for that. Even if it's days later, modeling repair, right? Which is, I mean, we know as adults in relationships require repair.
Right.
Because they're full of small breaks and misses and things like that. And our ability to do that and modeling that is going to set them up for much better resilience relationally, like both with others and with themselves. So that's incredibly important. Yeah, man, that's good stuff.
Yeah, man. Listen, Ryan, we're getting a free view of what you're doing for a lot of men. Tell us a little bit about the one-on-one or dad-to-dad conversations that you are having out there. How do maybe some men get a hold of you and take advantage of that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a certified integral coach, and that just means that it integrates a lot of different styles in working with men, and it bases it on the person that we're working with. Some of that work is physical, spiritual, and emotional. It pulls from a lot of different modes and methods of working with people. So it's integrative. And so, I work one-on-one with dads, whether you're, feeling just really stuck right now. You're feeling like just struggling to connect with your kids. Maybe it's a new dad struggling to find his place and his spot, dealing with like issues in relationship, whatever that is. I work one-on-one with guys navigating these kinds of things. It's a beautiful thing. So I'm at daringtodad.com or at daringtodad on like Instagram. I'm on places like TikTok as well and putting things out in the world, doing the podcast. So that's what I'm up to.
Awesome, man. And I'll make sure to put all those links at the show notes for you guys so you can click on that. Ryan, last thoughts. What do you tell a brand new dad that is feeling overwhelmed, whether their child is soon to come or is now here? What do you tell that brand new dad feeling like they're about to get hit by that freight train? What do you give them?
That feeling that way is okay. Feeling that way is the initiation of being a dad and feeling overwhelmed. The bravest thing you can do is just be able to embrace that, say that, reach out, talk to someone. If you're struggling, right? It could be someone that you don't know. It could be a coach, a therapist. If you have men in your life, fantastic. I'd also say another place to start is find other men in your community. It could be the Daughter podcast. It could be a church. It could be whatever group, look them up and get connected to other guys. It will radically transform the way you're showing up from your world and your family. So don't do it alone.
Ryan, I just can't thank you enough for your time, for your wisdom to drop on us. It has been awesome to sit here with you and learn from you today. I hope that we can continue working together, like you said, to help other men, whether they're in the my kid is about to be here stage or in the I've got a teenage daughter that needs help. I hope that we can continue to help men do these things.
Yeah, man. Thanks for what you do, Oscar. Appreciate it, man. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. All right. See you all later. Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want more of the Daughter Podcast, please go to www.daughterpodcast.com. There, you will be able to find the podcast in all the platforms. You'll also be able to chat with us, send us your thoughts, and shout out a dad that is killing it and someone we can learn from, share their story and why they deserve recognition. And I would love to shout them out during the show in one of our episodes as the season goes on. Additionally, you will be able to find all of our social media information from our Instagram, Facebook, and also our YouTube and any other news on the site. You could also find the daddy-daughter date night guide that we have created, and hopefully that'll help you to create those lasting memories with your daughter. Thank you all for your constant support and for listening and watching the Daughter Podcast.